Yeah, it's interesting because I had no idea who Destiny actually was. I really didn't know what he looked like, none of it. But he's always in the discourse because he's a debate bro.
Yeah.
And he takes sensational positions just to get attention. And that's like the worse these people are, the better they do in their little segment of the internet, apparently.
It's kind of phenomenal. I mean, truly the, in Yiddish, we'd say the chutzpah, but the arrogance to think that he can, and we're about to show it, but show a little clip from it. He just did like a 4-hour debate with Norman Finkelstein, Mulan Rabini, Benny Morris. But, Finkelstein and Rabani, are scholars. Like they have been reading about Palestine and Israel and the project of Zionism for decades. And here's this guy. I mean, did he start off doing the Twitch thing, or was he always like a podcaster?
I literally have no idea. And please don't ever follow this guy from this. I mean, not that anybody would.
God.
And don't even hate watch his videos. We're just sharing because it was regarding Israel, and he took Israel's side on this whole thing. Obviously, it's not a genocide according to him.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And telling Norm that he's just like using talking points, but Norman Finkelstein handles him beautifully, I think.
Yeah. Let's just show it.
All right, here we go.
Mr. Bennell, don't change the subject. If you don't know what you're talking about, at least have the humility. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's just so embarrassing. At least have some humility. Between us, we've read maybe 10,000 books on the topic, and you've read 2 Wikipedia entries, and you start talking about chapter 6. Do you know what chapter 7 is?
Answer me.
He's so good. He's so funny. And when he speaks quickly like that, he really there was another great clip.
Well, I love that the guy laughing at him at the end there is on his side.
He's on the guy sitting next to Destiny.
Side.
Yeah. And he can't help it. Yeah. Because it's so embarrassing.
And Finkelstein, there's a whole nother clip that exists that we didn't pull, but it's all the times Finkelstein said his name wrong, like intentionally.
Yeah. He keeps calling him by his real name, Bennell, Borrell, Mr. But yeah.
That's the stuff that wins these stupid debates.
I know.
Who gets the zingers on him. But that's where he failed. He thought he could come in and just use his little zingers and look up things on Wikipedia and beat great minds like Finkelstein.
Yeah. So I'm just going to show one more little clip.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And if the Hamas is hiding behind civilians die.
Every time they target a kid, I'm sure they believe it's Hamas. When they killed the 4 kids
they believe.
I know they believed it, even though they were diminutive size. Even though they were diminutive.
Angle, you don't see the size.
No, they saw
you don't see the size.
Let's leave it aside.
Oh, I know what he's quoting from, but you've lied about this particular instance in the past. Those kids weren't just on the beaches as often stated in articles. Those kids were literally coming out of a previously identified Hamas compound that they had operated from. They literally
Mr. Borelli, with all due respect, you're such a fantastic moron. It's terrifying. That wharf was filled with journalists. There were tens, scores of journalists. That was an old fisherman's shack. What are you talking about? It's so painful. It's so painful to listen to this idiocy.
He's awesome.
God bless him.
God bless him. I really appreciate it. It's really way too long a clip, and I'm sure most of you have heard it anyway, but just right after October 7th, when he said that he would not condemn Hamas and talked about Hamas as a resistance movement and made a correlation between them and Nat Turner's slave rebellion, or again, the Polish, the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, they were sort of bloodbaths. There was a lot of atrocities that happened, especially, with Nat Turner's slave revolt. I think they were beheadings. They killed women and children. But just the way Israel talks about every Palestinian as being guilty and being evil and being Hamas. Everybody's Hamas. The UNRWA workers, the doctors, the hospitals, the universities, the press. Everybody, the kids. The oppressed people look at their oppressors that way, because if you're benefiting from your oppression, you bear responsibility. And I don't think, an oppressed people has a right to fight for their liberation. And that is international law. And they are allowed to do it by taking up arms. The oppressors are not allowed to subjugate people by taking up arms. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're oppressed, it's almost like there's an expectation of violence at some point against your oppressors. So to justify, to be forced to defend atrocities against these people who eventually were going to fight back in any way possible and have tried all the other means possible by far. They have done everything they can at this point. They have no power. So.
And, the thing with the, return the hostages, I mean, the part of the reason that Hamas took hostages, and that rave was not supposed to be happening there. There's been a lot of discussion about how it was rescheduled. The location had changed. I don't think that was part of the expectation, but there is no leverage. And how do you get back your own people who have been stolen? Kids are being stolen. A 6-year-old was just stolen from her house last week. And, there, as opposed to the claims about, some mass systematic weaponized rape by Hamas, there is well documented evidence from scores of people who have been sexually assaulted or raped or tortured when they have been taken prisoner hostage by the IDF for no reason. They can just languish there for years. So I don't know. There is a boiling point.
There is, but it's the propaganda that really hurts us. So this morning I was listening to NPR on the way to work. Yesterday morning, on the way to work, and they had a father of someone killed in the October 7th. Actually, he was a hostage taken on October 7th, and it ended up dying. And he's part of a coalition that's lobbying politicians all the time on behalf of the hostages.
Right.
But in his interview, he brought up all the rapes. He made all this incendiary language based on all these, what we know now are lies. And this was yesterday. He's on NPR saying to this liberal audience that all these rapes happened, that babies got I don't think he said babies got their heads cut off, but he brought up a lot of the tropes.
The barbarism.
He literally did call it barbarism.
Right.
So he's programmed to use this language.
Yeah. And
NPR lets it go and they're playing it. They don't challenge him on it at all.
Yeah.
I get it. It's a difficult situation because he's a grieving father.
Right.
His son that was a hostage was killed and he just wants his body back. It's a very sympathetic story, but along with that sympathetic story to a liberal audience, they use all these things to make you more sympathetic for Israel at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
NPR doesn't even challenge it at all.
I mean, Ro Khanna was on Bad Faith with Brianna Joy Gray the other day, and he said the same thing about the rapes. And she stopped him, as she is so fantastic at doing, and her mind and her memory and the way she speaks, and went through Devin, thank you. Went through, there was first, right away Zaka was saying that there was mass rape along with the beheaded babies and the stabbed, pregnant belly. And then that was discounted. Then somebody else said that she saw, dozens of women raped and beheaded. And then somebody else said that he saw breasts cut off and being, kicked around. But, and it went on, all of these things that have been disproven. And then it's repackaged last year, in December, I think, the silent streams or whatever in the New York Times, which was then systematically debunked by Gray Zone, Mondo Weiss, Electric Intifada. Then they repackage it again, coming up with a new organization in January, where again, in the New York Times, they basically just use all of the previous information that's been debunked, but now they're repackaging it like, oh, we were right the first time. And then it was only because the Daily wouldn't run that show, because there was enough outcry from actual reporters that started to make the pages of, legacy media as being not fully corroborated. And yet they still talk about it now. And you've got a sitting member of Congress who's supposed to be,
Those lies, they live forever, because the retractions, if they exist, are minimal compared to the audience that first saw it. That same audience is never getting the retraction and on the same scale.
Yeah, and it's so deep in them. Thank you, Kimmy. Thanks, you guys. It is so deep in them that it is just an accepted fact that Palestinians are barbaric. They're all Hamas. They're terrorists. Like, I really don't understand how you can call Hamas terrorists, but the IDF is not. And meanwhile, one of the things when Israel first, of course, denies the flower massacre, where, you're starving a population that you've forced into this small confined area. You let in a few trucks, and of course, people are starving. They're running. But part of the reason that there is an order there, nobody deserved to be shot. I'm not, of course, saying that, but like part of the reason that because the Hamas government structure, they're all in hiding. And then just yesterday or 2 days ago, a police family was targeted and killed by the IDF in northern Gaza. So, they're like burning the candles at both ends, or, like you are starving them and then you put out a little, crumb and then you shoot them. It's like a trap, or you drop it on their heads and kill 5 people, or you drop it in the water, which is like, here are starving people and you are forcing them to work so hard to get your little crumbs. You need some kind of order, but you are targeting anybody who comes out, because everybody's Hamas. Well, that's the government. I mean, that's Gaza's government. It's Hamas. So like, everybody knows somebody who's Hamas. I don't
Hamas,
know.
And let me remind you who Hamas is and how they got there. Here we go.
So are you saying Benjamin Netanyahu deliberately boosted Hamas to try to prevent a Palestinian state?
Yeah, sure. He deliberately and systematically even told, is on record, whoever wants to avoid the threat of a two-state solution has to support my policy of paying protection money to the Hamas.
So what we did, with the permission of our Prime Minister, is to let Qatar to transfer a huge amount of money in cash, probably more than $1.4 billion. By doing it, we increased the power of Hamas. We did everything in order to make sure that Hamas will go on controlling Gaza, and Palestinian Authority will control the West Bank, so they will fight each other.
Netanyahu maintains the Qatar money was to avoid a humanitarian catastrophe. Having helped to build up Hamas, Netanyahu has now vowed to destroy it.
He fed the beast, and it exploded in our face. If you base your national security strategy solely on force, then you need to win 24/7 forever.
I mean, listen, we did that with the Mujahideen. We did that, right, with Osama bin Laden. Look at the Democrats doing that with extreme MAGA Republicans now. That tactic is disgusting.
It's a failure. And look, Democrats do it to try to win their election. Like, okay, we'll prop up the bad guy like they did with Trump, obviously. But Schumer's doing it in his state. And the effect of that in his state is that it's going to get a lot of Republicans to come out and vote that wouldn't have to vote against him. And it's going to make sure that, because they have a ballot structure where the top two candidates progressed. So it could have been two progressives on the ballot for the highest
Schiff.
position.
Are you talking about Schiff?
I'm sorry, Schiff.
Yeah, okay.
And
Sorry,
not progressive. But it could have been two Democrats on the ballot.
Right.
And because of them, Schiff spending all this money to get a Republican to be his main opponent to make sure he wins this thing.
Right.
All the seats below him are more likely to go Republican.
Yeah.
Than they were.
And by the way, Republicans might come out and vote for Steve Garvey, and then we'll have this, Trump Republican as the governor, which I mean, honestly, or as the senator.
And
it's a dangerous game, and it's disgusting, and it always blows up in your face. And as somebody said, Azov. I mean, look at all of these fascist Nazi parties, neo-Nazi parties that Biden, is tripping over himself to fund in Ukraine. But I mean, that started obviously. I mean, it did start with Biden and Obama and Victoria Nuland, but it is, some of the people who were in January 6th trained with the Azov Battalion. Some of the people who did the Jews Will Not Replace Us in Charlotte had trained with. Is it Charlottesville? Charlottesville. Sorry. Yeah. It is incredibly dangerous. And the interesting thing is, the Palestinian Authority or Fatah is so corrupt, right? They're basically just complicit in whatever Israel wants to do. That now I think Hamas is sort of enjoying quite a bit of popularity amongst the people in Gaza because they're actually fighting for them on some level, even as horrific as all of this is. It's like, I mean, look, I was joking with you when I sent you that blurb about the Houthis again. I'm gonna look for that they're
pledging to
Houthis announced that the operation in the Red Sea is expanding. From now on, ships linked to Israel will be attacked even across the Indian Ocean and from South Africa towards the Good Hope Road. And I joked with you like, I'm a Houthi stan now or whatever, fangirl, and obviously they are different, by the way, from Hamas, but like. That is the only group of people who are physically trying to stop the genocide. That's it.
Okay. I didn't know you were joking about that, by the way. But it's because I kind of agree with you. I mean, if you're rooting for the good guy versus the bad guy,
I mean, I don't want to get into the thing where, there were a bunch of, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I just
interrupting you. Yeah.
Kind of unrelated to this, but I did want to bring back to something you were talking about, Charlottesville, for example, right? So that brings me to Michael Rappaport again, because Michael Rappaport was on an interview recently saying he could vote for Trump, and they were questioning him about it. And he's one of the main things he brought up. He was like, you know what? When it came to Charlottesville, back when he was a lib, but now he's not a lib just because of the Israel issue. He saw that he was so anti-Trump that he put out his little videos all the time about how you can't both sides of this thing. And now he's saying, you know what? I'm starting to think Trump was right. And there were two sides to that story.
Because of immigration. That's why. Because of the people beating up the cop. And then it turned out, it was blamed on somebody who is supposed to be an immigrant, wasn't an immigrant, was a U.S. citizen, or at least was here totally legally. No human being is illegal anyway. But I mean, that's his ideology is what? Fear. That's the other thing. This idea that Jews can only exist as the biggest victims in the world is, first of all, so insulting. We're definitely not safer for having Israel there at all. We're definitely not safer for this whole this religious ethno state. And when you start getting into that sort of like contest of who's suffered more, all you're doing is pushing away people who could be in solidarity with you. Jews have been oppressed. So have Muslims. So have Palestinians. Like there's a lot of common ground between a lot of people. And if you're trying to measure who suffered the most, instead of trying to build some solidarity amongst people, that is a losing proposition every time.
Absolutely. All right. Is there we have a lot of stuff on Israel, but we only have, so much time left. I think, do you want to hit anything else on it?
I just think this is a little funny. I just want to quickly write. So Variety ran this article saying that more than 450 Jewish creatives, executives, and Hollywood professionals have signed an open letter denouncing Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest Oscar speech. And I read...
when you put these two clips up, I was like, oh, you got a duplicate. But
right.
I understood why you put the second one.
So here are the community notes, which I'm gonna put on my readers. But the community notes, because now it's like, over 1,000 Jewish creatives and professionals have now denounced Jonathan Glazer. So like this is a witch hunt for one person, a Jewish man who made a movie about the horrors of the Holocaust and the banality of evil and people looking away. They are targeting just this one person, right? Now it's up to 1,000 Jewish creatives. And then the note at the bottom says, the letter is a simple Google form that does not confirm or ask for proof that the signers are Jewish creatives or professionals. One of the signers listed by Variety is a SAG-AFTRA member named River to the Sea. River to the Sea. So, even in this like ridiculous McCarthyism where they're trying to show that there's this huge movement against him, they're even lying in that.
Yeah, that took me back to, those are like Pete Buttigieg's black support. And
if you don't write back by 3:00 today, you're a supporter.
You just co-sign. Hey, Joe Biden, if you support our show, if we don't hear from you in the next 20 minutes.
Yes. You said you were going to sponsor our third show of the week. Anyway, now there is a group of progressive Jews against AIPAC. Because again, AIPAC, disgusting organization that funds MAGA Republican. I mean, any Republican is disgusting to me. And January 6th, election deniers. They fund anybody who's up against the squad. I mean, they're just a disgusting coalition. So anyway, I'm glad that more people are becoming more vocal, but the level of propaganda is outrageous and it is hard to work through. I know.
Katie was going to have me on back in my parody days, but she never finished it up. So she kind of owes me. She was going to have me back on when I was Peter Douche in the day.
Look at that.